My name is Jordan. I'm the CEO at 7shifts, and I'm here today to talk to you guys about increasing employee engagement in restaurants. So I just wanted to start off with a bit of background on me. I'm so embarrassed by this picture. Like, it's so gross. This is me. I actually worked for my dad in some business locations growing up, and my grandparents also ran restaurants. And so, yeah, I worked in them. I saw a lot of the pain points that were occurring from my dad running Quiznos and managing staff and having to hire people, retain people. And this kind of got me thinking of how I could start solving some of these problems. So I taught myself how to write a bit of code. I wrote a little program that's now called 7shifts, and it initially started here. So fast forward, 7shifts is now serving over 8,500 restaurants across North America. And we specialize in workforce management, so labor, scheduling, as well as communication in the workplace. And from doing more in the communication realm, we started to get a lot of questions around retention and engagement. And this kind of spawned into some other stuff that I'm going to talk about here. But one thing that I found really interesting from trying to help my dad through some of these problems and over the years starting to help a lot of other restaurateurs with these problems is that managing a restaurant is so much more than scheduling. There's just so many problems and challenges. And I wish that there was a silver bullet to kind of tackle them all at once. But, after scheduling, we kind of looked more into the engagement side of things. So this is just a snapshot of some of the stuff that we looked at when we were considering how do we help make staff more engaged, and I'll kind of get into some of the other questions we had around it. But there's the qualitative side and there's the quantitative side. So in terms of qualitative, people always hear the word engagement. They're like, oh, it's super touchy-feely. How do you measure that? It's so soft. Yeah, there is a soft element to it. And so, certain things like shift feedback, how was your shift? And then the quantitative is around, how many people are late? How many people aren't showing up, sick? Are people eager? Are they trying to pick up more shifts? So these are all things that we're thinking about as it relates to the quantitative aspects of seeing if someone's really engaged in their work too. But this is just kind of scratching the surface. But this is how we approached it starting. Before getting super deep into the engagement side, I just think bringing it back to the turnover slide that Steve was talking about as well around turnover, super high, 73%. I just wanted to show another slide of the rest of the industry. The restaurant industry is obviously going up to the right in terms of turnover. It's pretty much been a trend since 2010, and you can argue there's a lot of things that have to do with this. I mean, the restaurant industry employs the highest amount of teenagers out of any private industry in North America. Teenagers, I don't know, you can argue are less reliable, and you can argue a lot of things, but I think there are some things that we can actually help, despite in employing a lot of teenagers and some of them going back to school. There are tangible things that we can do to help on the retention side. So this was a stat pulled from an article in Forbes. Employees with lower engagement are 4 times more likely to leave their jobs than those who are highly engaged. Again, coming back to what is engagement? It feels like this black box. I don't know how to address this. And McKinsey also did a study around, people and employees give their best efforts when they feel like they're working for something beyond just a paycheck. Again, what do you do with that? It's really important to know. Turning over an employee costs roughly $3,500. So it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to have someone join your restaurant and then leave. So these costs are all recruiting, orientation, training, and then loss of productivity from maybe having someone they're just having unemployees or lack of having employees, so being understaffed at the same time. So the question I would ask is, if $3,500 of produce went missing, would you guys care? Would you be asking questions? You'd be you'd be checking cameras. You'd be like, oh my God, who was working that shift? Like, what went missing? What happened? And it's a super important question to ask if you think about your products. So why don't we do that in exit interviews? 90% of restaurant managers don't even do an exit interview. There's no feedback and there's no questions around, why did you leave us? Is there something we could have done? Was it just pay? Was it the coworkers? What was it? I think just having these questions are super meaningful. Yet most people don't do that. So in our system in 7shifts, we manage employees and the workforce from a labor perspective. So we have access to information around who gets terminated and who's quitting. So we found in our data that a little under a third are terminated and a little over 2/3 quit. And collecting feedback as to why this is happening is really, really insightful for us and for the industry. So terminated, you can see maybe that's a potentially bad hire. Maybe you shouldn't have hired that person. And if they quit, maybe there was low engagement. But if 90% of people aren't asking questions, you don't actually know. So when we surveyed staff that quit other restaurant jobs, this was interesting. Have you guys ever heard the saying, people quit managers, they don't quit jobs? Yeah, how true. It's super, super true. And the feedback that we got was the majority of people don't like the managers and employees that they're working for. Obviously lack of flexibility and pay are up there, but a lot of people just want to work with other people that they get along with and are like-minded and can do great work. Have you guys also heard the saying, A players like to work with A players? Like, they do. So another side of it was out of that graph, there's people that quit and understanding, why people are terminated. Again, this is data from our system that we looked at. And we found that, a lot of reasons why people are terminated, no-show or late, substance abuse, theft, rude to customers were kind of like the top reasons. So I'll come back to, and I'll talk a little bit about how we can maybe prevent some of these people from getting in the door in the first place. So it's two parts. The first part is hiring, and the second part is engaging. So I'm going to talk about hiring for the right fit. First off, our company, we're almost 100 people now. I do a lot of hiring. There's a lot of things that are very transferable to the industry itself. And I'll get to the first quote, which I think is really interesting. We're better at training than we are at recruiting, so we hurry hire the wrong people and hope that training will fix them. And there's no right way to develop the wrong person. So Jim Sullivan, who's a restaurant consultant, said this, and I think this is incredibly true. And you'll hear it throughout my presentation as well, but it's so, so important that we have the right people to begin with. And there's a little bit more legwork up front that comes with that, but it makes the job of engaging them a little bit easier down the road. So the best restaurant brands hire, fire, and promote based off a set of core values. And Steve talked a little bit about it as it relates to Danny Meyer and the Union Square Hospitality Group. So yeah, I'm sure people know of Danny Meyer, and he's obviously an expert in the space. And Steve, we should have just shared slides. It would have made everything easier. But I'm gonna I don't have too much that mirrors Steve, but he said the same thing earlier, which is we look for people with a high sense of HQ, hospitality quotient. And for those that haven't listened to that interview on the Toast Garnish podcast, I would definitely encourage you to listen to that, because a lot of Danny Meyer's advice is applicable beyond the hospitality space. It's just good business advice in general for running and scaling a business. But it's so important how he establishes his core values as it relates to the hospitality space in general. So candidates with a high hospitality quotient are happiest when their energy is spent making other people feel better. That's how he defines it. And there's 6 traits that he looks for that are deep within the hospitality quotient. Kindness is a big trait. Curiosity. Is there an element where this employee wants to learn and be better than they were yesterday? It's super important. Work ethic. Are they a hard worker? Empathy, huge. If you can put yourself in someone else's shoes, you have a leg up on how to service them better. How would you feel if maybe your food was cold and, how would you want to be treated? Or if your steak wasn't cooked right, how do you address these things? It starts with empathy, self-awareness. So yeah, we're people. Like, we get up some days and we're not super happy, we're grumpy, but understanding that that's how you're feeling that day, and thinking about how you can change that, because you're going to be interacting with people. Self-awareness is huge. And the last one is integrity. So, do things as if people weren't watching. What would you do? Would you do the right thing? So it comes down to these four, and from those traits, Danny's kind of broken it down into four core values. You can go on their website and you can read these. But excellence, doing what needs to be done as well as it can possibly be done. So striving for excellence every day. Hospitality, doing all that can be done for others, more than expected, in thoughtful ways that let people know you're on their side. Hospitality is a team sport. It really is. The output of a manager is really measured by the output of their team. So it's really, really important that we have this team mentality as we hire and as we build companies. Integrity, as I mentioned, doing the right thing even though no one is looking, and entrepreneurial spirit. Think of creative ways to do things. I think that this is really interesting. Not just accepting status quo as the norm. Question status quo. Can we do this better? And if I bring this up, will other people say, man, I totally wish I would have thought of that? And maybe that encourages them to bring up that next idea they have. So if you listen to the podcast with him, he answers, talks about, people ask me, how do I always hire and manage to hire and train great people? And I think this comes back to what I was talking about in that two-part segment around hiring and engaging. 90% of it is hiring. 10% is training. Coming back to, there's no right way to develop the wrong person. It's true. You got to hire the right people. It starts there. So I'm just going to walk you through establishing some core values in the restaurant, because this is an exercise I don't think people have taken the time to do. We did it as a company when we were 10 people. We did it again when we were 60 people, and it was different. But the process that we went through to do that was a great learning. We took the approach of step one, if I could clone, and think of 3 people that if you could clone, you'd clone into infinity. And what did they do? What types of, what traits did they have that made them so unique, that made them amazing? Was it that they were super caring? They were over the top hospitable? They had an amazing amount of self-awareness. What are those traits? I would encourage you to write those traits down. Like in our company, we had a massive whiteboard, and we just whiteboarded all these traits. By the end of it, we had a whiteboard that was almost as long as these windows here, and it was like 3/4 full of traits. So you're at the brainstorming session at this point. After you've got these written down, some people do this differently. What we did is we grabbed other co-founders and stakeholders in the business, and we said, let's vote on these. Now, some people would say, hey, I'm more in favor of including those 3 people that I want to clone in that process. And that's great too. Maybe include them and say, guys, we want to hire more people like you. You have demonstrated exactly what we want our brand to be. And we haven't quantified it yet. We just know. We just know there's something about the 3 of you that's what we want. And so pulling it out of them and getting them excited about what those things are that maybe they didn't even know they had, and they feel good about it, and they feel empowered, and you're bringing it back to this team atmosphere. And start ranking them, and put check marks beside ones where people are like, yeah, I had those 5 too. Ask everyone to kind of write them down on their own, and then surface them and see which ones surface to the top. The step 4 is refining and defining them. So remember, this is a brainstorming session. So you've basically just been whiteboarding a bunch of core traits you think are great. There's probably some that are up there that aren't worded correctly that you kind of want to refine and tweak to make it more meaningful about how you want to then incorporate those in your core values. So I think this is a really key point, and it's something that we did as a company. is trying to make them action-based. Remember, you're hiring, firing, and promoting based on these core values, a demonstration of these core values. So this is why, I'm against, I'm not against, I should rephrase that. I'm not in favor of values that are non-action based, and granted, everyone's a little bit different, but for example, saying respectful. That's great. You want people to be respectful. But what does it mean to demonstrate respect? If you ask yourself that question, you might get some answers that are really important to you. Is it that respectful means that people are actively listening? What is it? That's action-based. So then you can say, hey, let's have a talk. I noticed you weren't actively listening to that customer, rather than, I don't think you're being respectful. So for us, I find action-based core values are easier to demonstrate or show a lack of demonstration. And so I'd encourage you to try and think about how you can actively measure those. So step 5, this is the last step in the process. This is when you kind of want to roll them out. So you've defined them, you've refined them, everyone's voted, you're feeling good, you're like, this is us. Remember, hiring, firing, and promoting. You probably already have some people in mind that are not going to fit these values, and that's fine. You're going to have to exit those individuals, but you should not do that before you start painting out what it is that you're trying to move towards now. Because when people go, why did you fire Tim and Sue? They were my best friends. Hey, they lack a demonstration of these core values that are super important to us. So unless you object to them demonstrating these core values, like that's what happened. And you want a team that's like, yeah, you know what, you're right. Like he's not very good or she's not very good at that. Okay, I get it. You want your team on board with these. So when you roll them out, it's really important that you have buy-in and you included people that you feel like are those people you wish you include in that decision-making process. Because guess what? When you're a manager and you're not there anymore, employees are going to talk. It's best to have other managers or people that embody those values that were part of that process in the room. Say, no, guys, like, this is good. Like, we're excited about this. And I don't feel like this was forced down our throats. We were involved in the process. And it was a great process. And I'm excited to come to work because knowing that we're going to hire more people like this makes people actually want to come to work. So by a show of hands, how many people do like an all hands meeting? Like once a month or once a week or stand up? Okay, great. So this is it's a great time to do it. If you've got these core values defined, you want to roll them out, do it at your all hands meeting. Say like, hey guys, here's what we decided upon. Here's what we're going towards. We'd like your buy-in and all these great things. I think the communication element is super important in this process, and it needs to be very clear. Having them rolled out, then maybe put on your website, or you want to keep it internally for right now, and you kind of want to tweak it and test it, and that's okay. These are not going to be in stone. And I know for us, we've changed our core values a couple of times because guess what? We grew, and there were certain things that evolved. And as Steve mentioned in his talk about Danny Meyer talking about culture and how it evolves and maintaining it, it's really how you evolve with it. And so making sure that everyone is understanding of here's how we think of the business today. It could change, and that's okay. But here's how we're thinking about it today. So Danny Meyer's quote of culture is the sum of values and behaviors you celebrate minus all the behaviors you put up with. So these core values are obviously ones you demonstrate. And you're going to put up with some stuff, but if they're not super important and they're not highly against your core values. I mean, people are people. You have to decide which things you care most about. Ideally, your core value list is not 100 things, right? That's basically asking for someone that's perfect. I don't think that's realistic. But these key things you are not willing to trade that are the backbone of the company that are just non-negotiable. And if you do this right, your culture will either attract the right people or it will repel them. So I've seen this happen at our company, and it's an amazing thing. It truly is, because you get someone in that might not be the right fit, and like the whole company knows, and it's so obvious. And that's what you want to get to. Obviously, you want to prevent that from happening in the first place, but your existing employees should either attract or repel this person. So incorporating it into the hiring process. I'm sure everyone has kind of the stages that they go through for hiring individuals. You know, I think of the first process, which is filtering. Maybe you're going through a stack of resumes, you're going through referrals that you've been given by other employees. Screen for values. Now you pick some folks you want to maybe hop on a call with them, maybe bring them in the restaurant for a coffee, and have some ideas of how you can start screening for these values. And I'll give you some examples that we use that very quickly we're able to weed out who we let into the club and who we don't think is a right fit. They could be super, super, super smart. But if they don't embody the values, no way. I'm not risking it. Sorry, I skipped over this. In-person interview, if they make it past the values, that's where we do kind of an exercise with, you know, if it's a technical position, we put them through some courses and or some kind of exams with our tech leads and making sure that they're competent and they're good at the job. And then if they pass that, then they go to an offer stage. And I'm actually, we're almost 100 people. I still am the last person everybody talks to. And I've only had to veto one person and say, no, we're not hiring you. But it was a really good learning experience from the managers that were trying to bring this person on, because we just had a little bit of a misalignment in terms of what we were looking for in the role and the values fit. And they totally understood. And at the end of the day, it made the entire department stronger of how we look at candidates. So that's just something I do that's important to me. I don't know how long we'll be able to do that for, but certainly if you can do it and you're trying to introduce values and they're new, you're going to need to help managers do this and be with them and be around them in this process. And if you're the last step in the process, great. At the very least, you're helping course correct early on because it's maybe a newer process that you're implementing. So I just want to highlight some of our core values. Being radically candid. I can tell if someone's shying away and not telling me the full story. You got to be out with it. There's just no time. And this is one of the things I love about the restaurant industry. I feel like a lot of people are radically candid in the hospitality base. They just tell it to your face, and I love it. Embrace new challenges. You got to be able to roll with the punches. We're an evolving company. We're changing all the time. You've got to be okay with change. Acting like an owner. If I gave you the company credit card, and yes, I sent you somewhere for a conference, like what would you go to, like the fanciest dinners at the fanciest restaurants? Would you rent like a Tesla and drive around? God, I hope not. That'd be embarrassing. I don't think you would be acting like an owner, because you probably wouldn't do that with your own money. Make every experience an 11 out of 10. Like we deal with restaurateurs. Hospitality has to be part of our blood and part of our core as it relates to the problems that surface every day. Solving with simplicity. I had no interest in diving 1,000 layers and thinking of 100 different permutations of how a situation can unfold. Let's simplify it and make a decision and just move on. So questions we ask. So I just wanted to use this as an example of questions we ask. These are real questions that we ask in our interview process for being radically candid. On the phone we say, have you ever screwed up really bad? Tell me about how you're dealing with it. Tell me when you failed super hard. And I feel like, well, it's not I think it was more my manager, but like, come on. You failed at some point. We all do. What was it? And have you ever been in a situation where your boss told you something wrong? How did you respond? Were you like, hey, I think I have another idea? Or did you handle that situation in not the best way? So what's your favorite book? Kind of off topic, but get them talking. You want to get them talking. You want to learn about them. Embracing new challenges. Have you ever moved to a different role or requested to go to a different role? What was it? How did you go about that process? In past roles, have you gone about getting a promotion? How did that conversation go? I think these are really important things to dive into. And ultimately, you want them talking like 80% of the time. It's like in sales. Like if you're talking all the time, the person on the other end is probably not going to buy. So try and get that person talking and telling you a little bit more about these examples that you think relate to embodying some of your core values. And again, if they pass this screen test, we do the in-person. So part one was hiring. That was the core values, hiring. Now it's part two. Now that you've hired them, I'm going to assume that you've got great people now. Easier said than done, for sure. 90% of it is hiring, 10% is training. So now that we've got them, we want to keep them engaged. So I'm going to try to uncover a bit of this black box here of engagement. Kevin Cruz, who's an author on Employee Engagement 2.0, this book you can grab on Amazon. He defines employee engagement as the emotional commitment an employee has to the organization and its goals, resulting in the use of discretionary effort. So this is obviously still a hard thing to quantify, but I think the outcome is that you would have better retention and more engaged staff. So I wanted to start by just sharing some really alarming facts about engagement. 62% of leaders said they didn't think their staff had an understanding of the goals and purpose or core values of the organization. This means most people aren't doing the first step that we just talked about. 70% of employees are not involved when enthusiastic or committed to their work. It's bonkers to me. 90% of American workers believe they do not contribute to their full potential because they don't feel excited about work. I feel this is very unfortunate. And I feel like we can do so much better in terms of just showing a little bit more attention to the employees and getting them a little bit more excited about work. So I'm going to tell you how to do that. But first, when employees are engaged, there are two big outcomes that we see from this. So there's the customer outcomes and then there's the employee outcomes. On the customer spectrum, you get better service. Customer satisfaction goes up. They're more loyal to you. And it all comes down to growth and profit. But the employee outcomes factor directly into these customer outcomes. Employees are happier. They're going to get better service. Retention is better. Productivity is going to go up, which kind of all helps the customer too. So these are all kind of going hand in hand as it relates to keeping and having the right person on board and having them engaged. So here are the 5 things that I think folks can do to engage the team. Number 1, take interest in your people. I mean, you hired them, right? Hopefully there's you hired them for a certain reason. You like their traits, you like their qualities, you like their how they approach certain situations. But what do they do outside of the restaurant that maybe you can tap into? Does that employee like taking pictures? Are they trying to be a photographer? You're changing the menu. You need new pictures for the menu. Why don't you ask that person to go take pictures of the menu? That just shows an interest beyond you thinking of them as a number. You know a little bit more about your people, so you can call them out and kind of draw out these other skills that they might have that might be applicable to your business. The second one is emphasizing team collaboration. So when we surveyed restaurant employees, they listed, as I showed in one of the earlier slide there, 76% of restaurant employees listed the coworkers as the best thing. So it's the inverse of why people leave, right? Is people want to stay because they really like their coworkers. So this is a huge indicator for, again, coming back to hiring the right people. It's easier to collaborate with people that you inherently are kind of one of your own. And this is a small example. You're changing the cocktail menu, or some sort of menu. Maybe you have a competition. Maybe you have some of the bartenders up there. Maybe you get the other staff around the table and they vote on the best one, right? Just make it fun. There's a lot of opportunity to just add more collaboration. Provide opportunities for advancement. So this is a survey that we did on employees in our system. We've got 250,000 restaurant employees in the system. 55% of restaurant workers want to grow their career outside the restaurant industry. However, nearly 25% said they want a promotion within. It's a quarter of restaurant staff. What I think is really interesting is, look at this. Servers all want to grow a career outside the restaurant industry. Not super shocking, but there's a lot of opportunity still within folks that you have today, and it doesn't mean that they need to be pushed into a manager role. That might not be the next logical step because that person doesn't have leadership traits and characteristics. So it's important that you figure out a path for folks that have no interest in becoming a manager or managing people, but they can still feel like they're moving up, progressing, and making more money in the space. Think of chefs, can you pay them more? Can you promote some of the junior level and bring them up to a sous chef and and beyond that, and then maybe you send them away for some training. You know, these are all things that you can do to help with some advancement in the space. Which brings me to my next point. Provide ongoing training. People like to learn, and they hunger for learning. So they get experiences within your restaurant. That's great. But what are you doing that's above and beyond all of the other restaurants that they could work at to help train them and level them up? So this is an interesting fact as well. Is staff are 70% more likely to watch a video than read documents. I feel like in this age where people are inherently digital, everyone's online, you know, think about creative ways you can get some training material down to your staff, whether it's a video through some iPads or something, and training them that way. But also, as I mentioned earlier, there could be something you want to send folks to. Maybe you're having a competition. Maybe coming back to team collaboration. Maybe the person that makes the best cocktail gets to go. I don't know, some bar conference. You know, you can get really creative with these types of things if you're thinking about them. Keep schedules flexible. 64% of restaurant employees agree that the flexible schedule is the second best thing about working in the industry. Again, this is folks that we surveyed within the 7shifts product. And this was after the coworkers and managers, which was the best thing about the industry. So in summary, stay true to your core values. And I hope that if folks here don't have any or haven't thought much about it, I think you should definitely spend more time around it. Look at Danny Meyer, what he's done in terms of Union Square Hospitality Group and some of the other things that you can maybe borrow and take, but and learn more about your people. I think those are the 5 key traits that I think are really important to do when it comes to engagement. But it really comes down to just caring about your people. That's it. Thank you very much.